Hey gang, welcome back to Real World Hot Rods. I'm Troy, time for another garage session, and on this episode we're again going to be working on the Blue Knight, which you can see right behind me, and a little explanation is in order this time, and I'll tell you why I'll tell you why. So I had been going on the plan that I was going to get it running and driving, drive it to a couple of shows in the fall of 2025, and then pull it back in, take it apart, take the front end off, and put a Heights independent front end kit on it. That was the plan all along. From the moment I bought it, I was going to put a Heights independent front end kit on it, but bought it in August. And as I was getting it running and moving it in and out, and I moved it around a little bit, pushing it. I didn't drive it. It has not moved under its own power since about 1994. I discovered that it had a bind in the steering. And it was pretty significant bind. I mean, it definitely, you could feel it, that it would kind of, bind and release and all that. And also ran into a little potential difficulty with freshening up the front brakes with that old Mustang disc brake kit. And so I stopped working on it for a couple of days to really kind of consider what I wanted to do, because our motto here at Real World Hot Rods is build them real, but build them right. And sketchy steering and brakes just aren't things that I want to deal with, Look, I know, I watch the other videos, and I like them, okay? I like things like Roadkill and Vice Grip, and I'm a religious watcher of Vice Grip Garage, but I know that I don't have the kind of mechanical luck that those guys have. And if something's gonna break, it's gonna break when I'm driving it. And I also know that if something happened when I was driving a car, that an avoidable brake failure happened or an avoidable steering failure happened, and I wrecked my car or bent up somebody else's car, or hurt me, or God forbid hurt Holly or hurt somebody else. Man, I just feel terrible about that. I think it'd be really tough to live with myself. So what I decided was that I was just going to stop doing what I was doing, stop worrying about the fall shows in 2025, and instead I'm going to do a full disassembly on it. I'm not going to take the body off the frame, but take the whole front clip off, take the suspension off, and do everything that needs. Put the Heights front end kit on it. Redo some of the things on the frame in the center X member to give it good structural stiffness again, and I've discovered some other things. So on this episode, you're going to watch me doing a little bit more automotive or archaeology on the car, and then the bad part is, I swear to God that I videoed the steering bind. I really did. And I lost that video. I got everything else, but I lost that video. So I'm not going to be able to show it to you. So you're just going to have to take my word for it that it was an issue. But I am going to be able to show you why I think it was bound up. So there will be a moment in here where you see me apologize and go, okay, this is where that clip would have gone. So anyway, that's what the Blue Knight is this time. We're going to start digging into it, and I'll be honest with you, the only thing that really irritates me about the whole situation is that when I got this car in August of 2025, every instinct I had said, Troy, take the front clip off of it, go ahead, just put the independent front end on it. And honestly, if I'd have done that, I'd have probably had it at the Voodoo Cruise, and I didn't follow my best instincts. I kind of went with, okay, let's just get it running and driving, and ended up spending a lot of time and a little bit of money that is just going to go to waste. So anyway, time for another episode of Garage Sessions on the Blue Knight. So it's time for a little more automotive archaeology on the Blue Knight, my 47 Ford Coupe. Again, street rod built in about 74, 75 is about as close as we can come on this. Wanted to take a look at the chassis and the brake system. One of the things I was told when I bought it was that it had Mustang disc brakes. This is a fairly common conversion back then. And so I took a look, and I looked at the calipers and the rotors. And of course, I'm not a Mustang expert. So next thing I did was I got on rockauto.com.
And rockauto.com, whether you use it or, whether you buy your stuff there or not, it's great. And the reason it is great is it has so many good pictures of the parts. And so I said, well, had to be a full-size Mustang before the Mustang 2. Probably somewhere between, I started with 70 and worked my way back. And here's what I found. This appears to be, based on the pictures, a 4-piston Kelsey Hayes type caliper that was installed factory on the 66, 67 Mustang. So that fits. And like I said, looked at pictures of the front and the back, and pretty sure that's what I've got. So we ordered that from Rock Auto. The rotors, likewise, appear to be a 66, 67 Mustang rotor. They are a vented brake rotor, because you can tell it's not just solid, it's vented, which is good. And I had thought about turning these rotors, just going with what we got. And I can't really do that now, can I? Because no shop, it's got a chunk missing out of it. No shop's going to turn that, nor should they. That's a rotor that's going to fail at some point, and I'm real partial to not having brake failures. It does have tube shocks on it, and I'll be honest, I don't know. Some of these apparently had lever type shocks, and some of these had these tube shocks. Or maybe this was in fact a converted tube shock. I'm not sure. Don't know what that tube shock is out of. It's not in great condition, but not going to worry about that right now. Brake hoses, I'm figuring, are also from that Mustang. So I ordered brake hoses for 66, 67 Mustang. Hopefully when they come in, they're going to be good. Okay, let's look out back now. Out back, I was told it was an Oldsmobile rear end. And it appears to be an Oldsmobile rear end, a Hotchkiss style rear end. That's the one with the dropout center section. And everything I've seen puts this between a 58 and a 64 Oldsmobile. And looked on Rock Auto, and it looks like there really isn't a lot of difference in the brakes between those years. So I just took a shot, and I ordered shoes and wheel cylinders and stuff for 62 Olds. Also, it looks like, I'm guessing here, but I think these trailing arms are probably also Oldsmobile. It wouldn't surprise me if they decided, you know what, we're just going to go ahead and grab the rear suspension when we grab the rear end. And it kind of looks like right in there, I don't know, maybe that was where the coil spring mounted on the Oldsmobile rear end, but of course they didn't use the coil springs. They used the original buggy spring here. So we kind of got a combination of an Oldsmobile rear end with the Ford buggy spring. It looks like it has a stock Ford Panhard rod on it. The drum brakes being again for the Oldsmobile. And the tube shocks are in at a pretty extreme angle. So going to be interesting to see how that works and drives. Not sure. I mean, I know that right now all this stuff is going to stay on here, just kind of get reconditioned and rebuilt. Looks like it's also got the stock Oldsmobile brake hose that goes to the hard line across the rear end. Went ahead and ordered that as well as wheel cylinders and shoes for the Oldsmobile rear end. I'm going to show you something else that's kind of cool, though. Wait until you see this. Okay, we're looking at the gas tank, and this appears to be the stock 47 Ford gas tank. We are going to pull this out and clean it out and all that. But first thing you've got to do is drain it. And check this out. Apparently, this era of early Fords came with a drain plug. That right there appears to be a drain plug. And as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure it is, because last night I was over at my friend Aiken's place working on her 1950 Ford two-door sedan, and I'll be damned if it didn't have one of those too. So that's going to make life a whole lot easier when it times to get the gas out of there. Also, got this trailer hitch that they use to pull their luggage trailer or camping trailer. Got that CB antenna, and pretty quickly both of those are going to fall off of this thing because don't really care for them. They're ugly, and I'm never going to pull a trailer with this thing. One more thing I want to show you. When you're working on these old cars, particularly the old street rods, where they maybe didn't keep great notes, sometimes you got to go by guess and by golly. And this is the master cylinder. We know we want to replace the master cylinder. And you just got to kind of look for some clues. It is a double bale master cylinder. And when I looked, it says Delco right there on the cap. So we know it's off of a GM product. I think GM was about the only ones who did the double bale master cylinder lids. If I pull this lid off, it's got fluid still in one end of it, but not in the other. That doesn't matter. Like I said, we're replacing all that. But I've got no notes on what this is. So I started looking online at late 60s, early 70s master cylinders. And of course, you had to start in about 67, 68 when they started using dual reservoir master cylinders. A lot of Corvettes used a double bale master cylinder, but of course a Corvette was a four-wheel disc, and Corvette master cylinders have a big bulge here on the side, so I knew that wasn't it. And again, I'm looking at pictures on Rock Auto, and finally what I landed on was a 1970 Nova power front disc rear drum brake master cylinder. Looks just like it, has the same size fittings, so that's what I went ahead and ordered. And again, if you're trying to trace this stuff down, if you got some general idea of what you're looking at, go to Rock Auto and look at the pictures. You don't have to buy there. I do. And again, that it's just because, quite honestly, I can find my own stuff on Rock Auto quicker than I can go and have the counterman do it at an O'Reilly's or an Advanced Auto Parts. But, so I've got that coming. I've been looking at the hard lines, and when I started this project, I was thinking I was going to redo all those hard lines. And I don't know if I'm going to, because so far from what I've looked under it front to back, these hard lines look pretty good. I'm not seeing any rust on them. This has the residual proportioning valve. It's got the combination valve down in it. And I'm going to inspect these lines a little bit more, but I may go ahead and go with those brake lines. Now, the fuel line's a different story. I'm going to run a fuel line from back to front. I'm going to drop the tank, clean the tank, basically give myself a brand new fuel system, probably put a new fuel pump on it, and all of that will just be fresh and brand new. So that's kind of where we're at right now with the Blue Knight, and time for me to get to work because I might as well start pulling some of this brake stuff off. I'm 56 years old, and I've been reading Hot Rod, Street Rodder, Rod Action, all those magazines since I was a kid. I've got, God help me, over 40 years of reading these magazines, and so I've amassed a lot of knowledge because I remember useless stuff that I've read. I've amassed quite a bit of knowledge about how these cars were put together back in the day because I remember reading those articles, and I probably got an article about how to put Mustang disc brakes on a 48 Ford axle somewhere. But all that knowledge only does you good if you really remember it. And as I was pulling this apart, I remembered something that I had probably forgotten. And that was how they did this kind of stuff. Because, nowadays, if you want to adapt disc brakes to your 48 Ford axle, you get online, there's a dozen manufacturers will sell you a ready-made kit, everything. They just send it to you, and you bolt it on, and everything fits perfectly, and Bob's your uncle, and you go driving. Back in the day, it wasn't that way, especially back in the 70s when this car was built. Back then, if you wanted to adapt disc brakes to your axle, there may have been other manufacturers besides Pete and Jake's, but they're the only ones I can think of. And most of the kits were not complete spindle to hub kits. I mean, most kits back then didn't have everything. A lot of kits only had brackets, and they would tell you what parts to get from the junkyard to adapt. You know, you couldn't just buy a Willwood rotor and caliper setup, for instance. And so a little more archaeology is required when you're trying to figure out what to do. Now, I saw what brakes I had. I ordered all my stuff from Rock Auto, including the bearings, seals, races, and all that kind of stuff. And then I realized I might not have ordered the wrong thing, because here's how it worked back then. You'd open up your Hot Rod magazine or your Street Rodder magazine, and it'd go, here's an article on how to adapt disc brakes to your 48 Ford axle. And again, nowadays you read that kind of article, it's just open up the boxes, assemble all the components, bleed the brakes, boom, you're done. Back then, it might have been, okay, order a bracket from this supplier, and then go to the junkyard and get this caliper and rotor. And a lot of times, to adapt the rotor to the spindle, they use some different size bearing than what it was originally stock. And sometimes they might even have to machine the hub or the rotor. In this case, the Mustang hub is a unicast hub, so the hub is cast in with the rotor. And they might have to machine that to accept the new bearings. Or some of those articles might have even just said, here's the parts to get, and here's a pattern for the brake bracket, and cut your own and make your own brake bracket. I don't think they did that on this one. This brake bracket looks like it was a manufactured brake bracket. So my guess, probably an early Pete and Jake's kit. But here's what that means. It means that in order to make sure I'm doing the right things, I have got to disassemble the hub and the rotor and the bearings and get the numbers off of the manufacturer off of the bearings that are in there. And then I'm going to go upstairs and sit down at the computer. I'm sure there's a cross-reference for tapered roller bearings on the internet. I mean, they're all basically the same design a Timken design. And I'm going to take these numbers and I'm going to put them in, and I'm going to see if they cross-reference to the stock bearings that I've got coming. And if not, check the dimensions and everything and figure out exactly what I've got to do to get these bearings onto the new hub and rotor setups. I may have to have the rotors machined. I don't know yet. Figure out what I've got to do to adapt all that. So it's going to take a little bit more research and archaeology. And again, if you're wondering why I am not just going to have these rotors turned, that'd be a great idea if it wasn't for that right there. Like I said, there's no reputable shop that'll turn that rotor, nor should they. That's a brake failure waiting to happen. So, pulled the bearings out, the inner and outer bearings out, and then used a little brake clean on them, and I was able to get to the point where I can find the numbers. This is a Bauer bearing, which Bauer is now BCA, and it is 15115. That's the inner bearing. And then the outer bearing is also a Bauer, and it appears to be that the bearing number is LM11949. So I'm going to go ahead and plug those in. First of all, see if am I lucky enough that these actually interchange with the factory 66, 67 Mustang bearings, because if I do, I'm home free. But if not, I got to find out what the dimensions on them are. And like I said, but think about this. Back then, guys would sit there and they would pour through parts catalogs and bearing catalogs to figure out a bearing that had the right dimensions to adapt this rotor to that spindle. Man, that took a lot of work. I'll tell you one thing I'm thankful for. Another very popular swap back then was the mid-60s Volvo 122 rotors and calipers. And that kind of stuff is a lot harder to find nowadays. So I am thankful that they did Mustang, which is still a very popular car. So now to go upstairs and take those numbers, put them into the computer, and see what I've got, and see if they interchange, and I'll let you know.
Okay, like I said, there's going to be a moment where there's a lost footage, and here it is right here. Again, I apologize to you guys. I don't know what the hell happened to that footage, but and it would have been really educational, I think, to see this bind happening. But again, I'll be able to show you why I think it was binding. So anyway, thanks a bunch.
Okay, so we are taking apart the Blue Knight. Going to strip it down, install a new Heights front end kit on it, get that Buick engine out of there, get everything ready for the big block Chevrolet to go in. And what my plan is I'm going to strip all the front sheet metal off of it. Like I said, get the motor out, get all the suspension off and everything. Put the new Heights front end in there, weld it partially, put the big block in there, get the motor mounts welded up, get everything mocked up, get all my accessories mocked up, figure out some of the other issues like where's the power brake booster going to go. And then at that point, I'm going to take it all back apart. And I'm not going to put the front sheet metal on it, back on it or anything when I mock it up. I just want to get the major mechanical components situated. Then I'm going to pull it all back apart, pull the body off the frame, and rebuild that center X member that they torched out, and do some work on the rear suspension, get the rear suspension converted to coilovers. That's kind of, and then put it all back together. And that's the game plan. And while I'm doing this, I got to be gentle because I want to preserve this paint as much as possible. So as I pull it apart, you can see I've got the front bumper and the splash apron off of it, got the headlights out of it. Some of the things like the headlight buckets, there's no reason to pull them out of the fenders, so they'll stay where they're at. I do have to figure out how to disconnect the wiring holding the fenders on, all that kind of thing. I'm going a little slow as I'm pulling this thing apart for a few reasons. Number one, I want to be gentle with this thing. I want to make sure that I don't cause any damage. And I can already, this car was painted all of a piece. In other words, the stuff wasn't pulled apart and painted. As you can see down here on the splash apron. I mean, the splash apron is painted with when it was on it, which, hey, that's common. That's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. But it does mean that I kind of got my fingers crossed, hoping everything lines back up like it should, and all of the unpainted parts are kind of covered up again. So that's one reason. Part of it is just figuring out how this thing comes apart. But so that's one reason I'm kind of being gentle with it as I take it apart. Obviously, I don't want to cause any damage. Another reason, however, that this is going to take a little while to take apart is that if you look, there's a lot of variance in the fasteners used to put things together. I mean, over here we got a Allen bolt, few washers, nut. We got a straight screw with a nut on it. Over here we got regular hex head nuts. So it's not like I can just grab one wrench and one socket and pull everything apart. But that's okay. I mean, like I said, I'm not on a time limit here. I would like to get this car done for World of Wheels the first weekend in March. I think that'd be a great time to roll it out. But if I don't, it's not going to kill me. I'm going to go ahead and file my entry and everything. Kind of plan on that. It gives me about 5 months, and I should be able to do that. Again, if I don't, life happens, It'll get done when it gets done. I mean, I'm just working on this in the evenings on the weekends. This is not what I do for a living. So, anyway, that's the game plan, and now it's time to get some wrenching done. So I took a look here, and it appears that the next easiest thing to pull off is going to be the hood latch plate. So we're going to pop these out. This is another one of those, by the way, where everything isn't the same size, which I don't know is their fault. This may have been a Ford factory design, but we've got 3 of the bolts have 3/8 heads on them. And then it looks like we have 4 bolts with 1/2 inch heads on them. So we're going to deal with that. Alrighty, got my socket changed, and let's pop those out now. Drop that bolt, we'll pick it up momentarily. You can see the high level of professional production going on here because I'm doing this one-handed, and it appears that one of those bolts is stripped out. Yay. Gonna have to put the phone down to deal with that. It turns out it wasn't stripped out. One of those 4 bolts actually had a nut on the back side of it. My guess is that the weld nut on the back had come loose, and they just decided to go ahead and put a nut on it. So, got that handled. Now I can get the hood latch plate off. Now I can see to figure out the grill and figure out how it comes off. It appears that these tension clips hold it on top, and then there's a couple of bolts down there on each side that hold it on the side. And right now there's somebody on watching this who's real familiar with 47 Fords going, yes, you idiot, that's exactly how it works. But as you can see, I'm figuring this out for the first time myself. So let's go ahead and start pulling those out. Also, I think I probably ought to get the horn out of the way. Okay, the horn is held on with a bolt and nut, which is obviously an absolute blast when you're by yourself. But we're going to try a little trick, and you may already know what this trick is, but we're going to give her a shot and see if this will help me get this off. I'll show you. Okay, when you're flying solo in the shop, like I do a lot, sometimes that bolt and nut where you can't reach the backside, it can be kind of a bitch. And I don't have to get that horn off to get the grill out, and I may end up just punting on that, but we're going to try a trick first. These are really strong magnets. I think they're rare earth magnets, and I actually got them with a toolbox I bought a little while back. I didn't go out and buy these, but I'm sure you can get these on Amazon. And what we're going to do is we're going to stick them on either side of the bolt head that I want to remove, and then we're going to come around and turn the nut and see if that'll hold it. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. It depends on how tight they are, depends on how rusted up they are. So let's see. Okay, you see those magnets holding the bolt head there. Like I said, this doesn't always work, and if it doesn't work, it won't stop me. That horn will become more accessible a little bit later, but it would ease up my reach to one of those bolts on the grill. So if I can get it out right now, I'd like to. And as I look at it, giving a little thought, I don't think I'm going to reuse that tire. I was thinking about it. You know, that tire's been all over the country, but I don't know. Might ride a little rough. Anyway, let's see if this trick works. All right, I am going to use an end wrench on this instead of a power wrench for a number of reasons. One of which is I want to see if I'm doing any good or if that bolt's turning. The bolt is not turning, and that horn is going to come off. And let's see. Oh, yeah. She's only finger tight. That's pretty cool. I better put down the phone and, well, maybe I can just get it all off one-handed there. Got her off. Okay. Now, again, that's just one of those pretty cool tricks for those of us who work in our shop a lot. And sometimes we have to grab the other side of a bolt and nut that we can't quite get to, can't reach. Arms aren't 10 feet long. And the other cool thing about it, by the way, if you put your magnets on the bolt head side rather than on the nut side, holds the bolt in place just like that. Then I can walk around there, reach in, grab it, and it's not falling over the place. So that's a cool little trick. Okay, so I got the grill off of there, and I was right, by the way. You can see that this car was definitely painted all together. So I'm going to have to be really careful with how things line up when it goes back together, so I don't mess up any of the, don't have any of these little lines showing. The process of getting the grill off of there was neither power tool friendly nor video friendly, so that's why I didn't do it with one hand and hold the video with another hand. But it's off of there, and now I can kind of see what I'm looking at a little bit better. And the next thing will be to pull the fenders off. But just a second, there is something I want to show you real quick. When you're pulling these things apart, one thing you should always do is just get a whole bunch of these Ziploc type bags and separate out your bolts and bag them and tag them and all that. I don't even know how many of these bolts I'm going to reuse. They're pretty nasty and they're pretty rusty. But what I do know is I want to save them. And actually, 2 of them broke off when I was trying to get them out. The grill bolts so far have been the most stubborn ones on it. But I do know that I want to save them. Got them in this little tote. And that means when it goes back together, Then I can make decisions about, okay, do I want to put new bolts on it or do I not? Definitely want to save those little clips, although I may use different bolts in them. So yeah, when you're pulling one of these things apart, it doesn't take that much time to bag this stuff up, tag it, and that way everything goes back together much, much smoother. Believe me, there's been cars I've worked on where I didn't do this and I regretted it. And I'm going to go through, and it looks like I'm going to be able to unhook all the wires and not just have to cut them apart, which is good news. Sometimes you just never know on some of these old builds, but it does appear that I can unplug most of this stuff, so I didn't really want to cut it. I mean, I'm not saving this wiring system. I'm gonna rewire it with a painless kit because all that wiring's just old. But at the same time, you're still a lot better off if you can save what's there first. So I'm going to go ahead and get all that unplugged. Okay, so more fun being had here. Started to pull the front fender bolts off, and they just started spinning. And so I looked, and they are held in with bolts and nuts. And so I had to pull the interior kick panel off, which I was going to do at some point anyway. Going to have to, just wasn't figuring on having to do it quite yet. And if you look, you can tell that these were at one point held on with captivated nuts, and at some point they became uncaptivated, and they're pretty rusty. And I got to be honest with you, it's getting a little late. So what I am going to do is soak them down with some penetrating oil and shut down for the evening, and we're going to hit this again tomorrow.
All right, guys, that's another episode of Garage Sessions with Troy. Once again, please subscribe to this channel. It is a new channel. I'm just getting it off the ground. Subscribing helps out a lot. And keep following me because there's going to be more of the Blue Knight. And this car is going to be on the road in the spring of 2026. And we're going to be doing some pretty cool stuff with it in between now and then. So keep watching. I thank you very much, and I'll see you next time.